Welcome back to building a fursuit from scratch. Tonight, we speed run waiting for glue to dry. I attempt the impossible by cutting some foam in half. And we create a permanent temporary fit. Hi, my name is Waffles, and on this episode of building a Protogen from scratch, we finally finish our cybernetic suit of armor. In the last episode, we created these two massive foam monoliths that'll serve as the legs to our cosplay armor. We had a lot of problems creating these, but in the end, we're successful in learning how to sculpt with foam. This time though, it's even harder. Not only do we finish the rest of the armor, we also need to find a way to put it all together. So with our goal to finish the rest of the armor, let's quickly talk about what we have remaining. First, we have the two little shoulder guys, then the chest piece, and then finally the belt piece down here. When working on new projects, I like to start with the largest thing and then work my way smaller. So let's go ahead and begin with the chest piece. In order to make things go a little bit smoother, I'm using Mugiwara's Protogen armor pattern that I pre-printed. This pattern will act as a rough guide and should make cutting out the basic shapes a lot easier. To start things off, I go ahead and line up all the paper to get a rough idea of what the pieces are going to look like. Once satisfied with the layout, I go ahead and start cutting out and gluing everything together. The first problem that I ran into is that the pattern is just a little bit too small for me. To solve this, I added a half-inch border to the edge. This should scale everything evenly, making the final piece of armor a little bit larger. With everything cut out, we can now transfer it over to the foam. I'm using 5mm thick EVA foam. Last episode, I tried several different types of foam, and I found that this was what worked the best. After completing all the cutting, we can now go ahead and start assembling our discount set of Legos. Learning from our mistake last episode, I'm gluing everything together with super glue instead of hot glue. This should allow us to glue the ends together flush instead of hot glue make a mess everywhere. And I say easier, this is still by far the hardest part. As I glue the seams, it transforms the flat 2D object into something 3D. That creates tension which is stored inside the seams, making them easily pop apart. This process took a lot longer than I expected because each section needed to dry completely before moving on. After spending an afternoon accidentally gluing my hand to the table, we finally finished our chest armor piece. I think it's looking pretty sweet. The only small issue is that our seams are coming apart in a few spots. Nonetheless, I think there's still a few more things we can quickly knock out. First, let's go ahead and trim all these edges so they look really nice. I think once that's done, this piece should look a lot prettier. And then, to deal with these seams, let's take a piece of felt and then hot glue it over the seams right here. The felt's gonna do a great job of making everything stronger, and once it's hot glued in place, we won't have to worry about this thing falling apart while fursuiting around. Now that all the felt backing is added, I can go ahead and try it on. What I'm looking for here is the general look of the foam and making sure that everything is symmetrical. The next step is going to be combining the halves together and then cleaning everything up. First, I glue the tops together, making sure to add a little bit of felt for strength. Next, I glue the side shut, but this is where we run into our first problem. In order to actually wear the armor, we'll need some way to put it on. So here's the plan. I'm going to add a zipper to both halves of the armor and then use that to get everything shut. This zipper should make it possible to actually wear our fortress of foam. Now that is some ugly looking hot gluing. So now with the zipper on, we can hopefully try this guy on. And I don't think I can do the zipper up by myself, but you guys should get the idea that we have a cool new chest piece of armor. Now, something I'm noticing immediately is that this armhole is just a hair too small, so I'll probably need to enlarge that a little bit, but I think this is a pretty great starting point. Now, before we get into all the painting and filling and sanding, let's just go ahead and knock out some of the rest of the pieces. Let's do next the little shoulder guys, and from there we can kind of reevaluate and figure out what we want to do next. The next thing on the to-do list is knocking out the belt piece. This should be more or less the same kind of work. The real challenge here is going to be getting everything glued together strong enough so that it doesn't immediately fall apart. One of my favorite parts about fursuit making is watching everything slowly come together. You spend hours doing long, lonely work, watching raw materials slowly transform into something new. By the end of this adventure, you find yourself holding a remarkably personal creation born of your own hands. Now, I know what you guys are all thinking, damn, where did I get such a cool pair of pants? Now, this still looks a little goofy, but we're definitely moving in the right direction. Now that we have the chest piece done and the kind of belt piece, we have a good idea of how this armor set's kind of going. There are a lot of little things that I want to do. For example, probably trim this armor to be a little bit shorter and possibly replace the zipper with like a Velcro solution or something a bit easier. But for now, we're moving in the right track. Once we have all of the big pieces done, we can then start talking about all the finer details. But until then, we're just kind of guesstimating. So let's go ahead and knock out the shoulder pieces and finally finish all the big pieces for a set of armor. The shoulder pads are the smallest part we're making here today, but that doesn't mean it's going to be easy. Making complex curves is always hard and requires a little trial and error. The first thing that I do to get started is cut out all of the parts in foam. My favorite way to cut this foam is using a very sharp craft knife. These knives are both cheap and sharp, but that's only if you regularly change the blade. And please make sure to dispose of the blade somewhere safe as opposed to just throwing it in the trash. And finally, with a little glue and felt, we can hold it all together. So now that we have everything glued and put together, we can go ahead and size it up for fitting. One thing to keep in mind is that the bottom of our little shoulder pieces here are flat, but your arm is actually more of a cylinder. So when we attach it to the arm, we're going to have to cut like a U into it just so it'll fit nice and flush. These little armor pieces are turning out fairly cool, and they'll look a lot better once we have a screen on them and some black paint and the LEDs are in place. But for now, with just the goal of getting all the big things done, they're in a pretty good spot. Now, the next thing that I want to tackle in this episode is just trimming everything up to size. Right now, the parts are still a hair bit too big, and we're gonna need to come up with some sort of way to actually strap it to the body. Because if you just wear this piece as a belt now, it'll probably fall down while you're fursuiting. So let's come up with an over-engineered strap to keep it held to your body. Okay, so here's the plan. I'm gonna build a belt and hang everything off of it. And the way I'm gonna do that requires some nylon strapping and a whole lot of brackets. I recently picked up a 3D printer, specifically an Ender 3, as an upgrade to the shop. So far, it's been a reliable bracket producing machine, creating all these plastic components. After using a 3D printed base for this project, I've been really happy with them, and for the next Fursuit I build, I definitely want to print my own. First off, I need to create all of the straps that are going to hold this thing together. I test fit everything together, and once it all looks correct, I hit it with the sewing machine. Since the last time you guys have seen the leg pieces, I've made just a few upgrades. Starting off, I went ahead and added this trim piece that goes around the top. That's just to help it sit more flush against the body. And then on the inside, if you can see it, I've added a bunch of structural bracing just to make this thing a lot more sturdy. Now, let's go ahead and figure out how we're gonna mount this to the actual body. I'm leaving all these straps long on purpose, and that's just to make balancing everything out a lot easier. Once I'm happy with the length, I go ahead and snip the end. If you use a lighter, you can melt the end to prevent it from fraying. The final result looks like a climbing harness for an octopus, and its sprawling appendages should help keep everything in place. I'm sure there's a better way to do this, but you have to admit it looks pretty cool. So with a lot of the big parts knocked out, let's go ahead and try to put this entire puzzle piece together. I think I'm gonna start with the bodysuit. Now, the bodysuit is not long for this world. Next episode, we'll probably be making some pretty heavy modifications to it. But for now, it'll serve its purpose as just like the under fur garment. Looking a lot better already. Now the next thing that we're gonna put on is the belt piece, and from there we can go ahead and attach our big leg armor pieces. I will say it's just a hair snug, but I think we're gonna have to just live with that. I'm also trying to straight out as many of these little hookups as I can, just to make it a little bit easier when I attach the legs. These bodysuit armor pieces should also look a hell of a lot better once they're painted black and have some LEDs embedded in them too. One of the hard parts is tightening these straps down while also putting it on. It might honestly be easier just to do it when it's all off again, but I'm trying my best right now. I probably should have thought about this beforehand, but I'm not exactly sure how to put these paws on with the armor pieces, but I'll try my best. One slight downside of this costume is just how big it is. It's hard to fit on camera. So now that we have our paws in place, let's go ahead and add the chest armor. Also, the eagled eye among you will notice that I actually left off the tail. Now, that's really just because I'm kind of lazy, because to put on the tail, I need to undo all the straps and stuff again, and I can't be bothered. In the future, we might come up with a cool quick latch or something, but for now, we'll just see how it looks without it. Another thing that I definitely want to change is this armor piece from having a zipper on the side to instead like a Velcro or something. That'll make this a lot easier to put on, and it should be a fairly easy fix. And now for the trickiest part, let's go ahead and pop on the helmet to kind of finally see how this whole thing looks when put together. One thing you might have noticed I didn't consider, and that was the neck interacting with the chest armor. I think I'm going to redo some of the pieces of the chest armor to make this a little bit easier in the future, but for now I'm going to quick pop this off and then have it go over the neck fur just to see how it looks. I almost forgot about the paws. When I put this on in the future, hopefully I'll have just a little bit more help, but for now it should get the point across. So you tell me, YouTube, is this whole fursuit turning out pretty cool? I'm quite happy with the results. Now, before I dye in an oven, let me go ahead and take this thing off. Now, I know the test fitting we just did went kind of rough, and there's definitely things we can improve on, but we're in a really good spot for our Protogen. In this episode, we went ahead and finished all the major armor pieces, and I think we're in a really good spot overall. Next episode, I want to go ahead and clean everything up and finish some of the more detail work. We also need to redo kind of the chest body piece. Before, it was running into some issues while trying it on, so I think I have some ways we can build it a little bit better, and a cool idea might be to add a little backpack that contains our batteries instead of having us carry them around everywhere. Also, if you've made it this far in a video about building Protogens, you probably love fursuits. So go ahead, check to see if you're subscribed, and if these videos have brought you any value at all, go ahead and hit the like button. It's something that's free that you can do to help show your support, and I appreciate all of you guys' comments. So with all that being said, thank you guys again so much, and I can't wait to see you guys again soon.